in the studio with me. I'm very pleased to have Greg Jobin-Leeds, social activist, educator, founder, and co-chair of the Schott Foundation for Public Education. He's the author of a new book, When We Fight, We Win, 21st Century Social Movements and the Activists Who Are Transforming Our World, or that are transforming our world. And Greg, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom.
Thanks for joining us. So tell us about the book.
So it covers 6 movements of today: the climate movement, the economic justice movement, Fight for 15, Occupy, the anti-displacement movements from there. It covers the prison movement, the immigration movement, the public education movement. Is that 6? I think we're getting close anyway. I always drop one every time. The LGBTQ movement. And it really focuses on the movements that are getting a lot of traction right now, that are in this very hard times, but really coming back and fighting back really hard.
It's really remarkable when you think about it, how far, like, for example, the LGBTQ movement, how far they've come just in the last decade. But when you look back on the history of it, and all the way back to, like, Stonewall, you see that there have been, movement tipping points, and that it really, it may look nonlinear, it may look logarithmic even. There's a certain linearity to it. There has been.
Build. Yeah, it definitely built over time. And when you think about Stonewall, it was a anti-police brutality
You're right.
riot that so when I think about Black Lives Matter today, I think a lot about it. And then you have, like, with the AIDS being, many people talk about that AIDS crisis, and you think about all the ACT UP and the disrupted,
especially in the 80s.
Yeah, and people's lives were not being valued. Gay men, they thought of it as mostly a gay men's problem, and many people wanted them quarantined. They wanted them tattooed, and so I'm hearing Donald Trump now today, and so many people talking in that line, and it's just keeps bringing back some of these evil things keep rearing their head, and the movements keep rearing their head.
Wow. What is the difference in movements that causes the gay rights movement or the Black Lives Matter movement to catch fire, and the union movement, which is absolutely necessary for America to have a functioning democracy and a stable middle class, is floundering? Now they're floundering under a multi-billion-dollar, multi-decade-long sustained attack by some of the wealthiest people and most powerful corporations in the world. But they're floundering. What movement lessons would you share with leaders of unions that you've learned from looking at all these other movements?
I'll share less. I won't. I'm not gonna. I can't be someone who would tell others what to do. In that sense, I can tell you what I've learned. And one of the questions is, and I really appreciate you asking me, one of the key questions that we asked at the end of each interview was, what are the lessons that you've learned that you'd want to pass on to young activists? And so so here's 4 of the lessons, and there's many more in the book. We really focus on 7 in the book, but here's 4. One is, you got to tell your story. And the AIDS crisis was a moment actually to tell the story and actually bring it into the lives. Black Lives Matter is doing the immigration movement. They are gorgeous at telling their story and coming out in a similar way. 2 is disrupt power. You got to disrupt power and have the aim of changing who holds power and how it's held. So disrupting power, you think about the Bernie Sanders rallies that got disrupted by Black Lives Matter. That improved Sanders' campaign, and it really has begun to change a lot what's going on. And it's been a key part of the ACT UP and the, you think of it, now people think of the LGBTQ movement as a movement that was more of a policy movement, because that's how it ended, but it was a very disruptive. So 3 is, you have to have visions of transformation. All the movements have visions that are way beyond, and the Black Lives Matter vision is really totally gorgeous vision. And tell your story.
Disrupt
power, have visions of transformation, and come on, Greg. I'll come back to you in a minute.
That's enough. That's enough stuff.
I'll give you 3.
Right there.
3 is always a good number to have.
Yeah, that's a great start.
I know. Here's the last one, which is solidarity. Solidarity is critical, and gets to something I talked about when I was on your TV show the other day, was that to be silent is to collaborate. And this is something that comes out of my own personal stories of my parents who both escaped Nazi Germany. but it speaks truly to today when you think about there's 2.5 million people in jail, more than any other country in the world. We have 4 million people being deported. We're the largest contributors to climate change. And when you think of it, we need to be the ones who stand up and speak out. And the movements of today that are transformative are ones that make connections across the different movements, and they all stand together. And I think that's what's really different about today is there's a potential for the movements to all converge into one really powerful movement.
Right. And to go back to labor, I don't hear the labor movement telling stories. If they are, it's not making the press.
Right.
I don't see them engaging in disruptive activities. If anything, they're trying to keep their heads down. And therefore, if you don't tell your story and if you don't disrupt, then you don't get the press, you don't get the media, you can't, and then you don't get the solidarity of the people around you.
There is a lot of exciting stuff happening in the labor movement. We focus the education chapter, the public education chapter in Chicago, where the Chicago Teachers Union is absolutely incredible. And many are looking to them as both a model for labor, but labor in the way that they work, they're very grounded in their community. The teachers, it's the rank and file teachers. It's not a top-down movement, has a transformative vision, and they are really getting out both their powerful stories, but working with parents and teachers. And when they went out on strike, and they were very disruptive, normally when teachers go out on strike, the parents are the first to object because it's most disruptive to their lives. But the parents came out in support of them because they were the rank and file teachers who were in the communities working. They had all the community relations. And so I think that's just another one of the lessons is you got to be grounded in the community that you're working with.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. What movements? Well, first of all, Bernie Sanders has said that he's not a politician who wants to be president. He is a guy who wants to create a movement that will change American politics. He's talking about a revolution, and by revolution, he's not talking about the 1860s. He's talking about the 1930s. With the FDR revolution,
right?
Or for that matter, the Reagan Revolution, which was an anti-revolution. You could say that the Clinton revolution within the Democratic Party, the same thing. It's the Democratic Party went corporate with the Clinton presidency and the Obama presidencies. What are your thoughts on the movement that Bernie is talking about creating?
So I think he's right on in all of this, and we also have to remember the limits of presidential politics. And so while, you should get out and vote, you should get involved, it's very important. We should also, one of the big mistakes that happened with Barack Obama is a lot of people said, okay, let the young guy, have his moment, and do it. And Obama invited so many people into the White House. Everybody felt they were friends, and most of the movements got nowhere during that time. And so one of the things that Martin Luther King talked about, I think, in his when he was asked to align with the Democrats and Johnson's campaign, is he said, "We will lose our power if we go to the inside politics." Mm-hmm. So the inside politics is key, but the movements in this book really focus on the outside politics, which is also key. So, and the other thing I just got to say is going back to the 1940s or 1930s movements is important, and there's a lot of things to be learned from it. And we have to do something fundamentally different because that ended up not transforming our economy in enough of a fundamental way so that we ended up getting the backlash of what many people credit to Reagan, but to the businesses, these huge corporations. I'm not talking about the small business, which they've ended up taking the power and concentrating. So we're in a worse place now than we were prior to that.
Right. They basically took it over. The book is When We Fight, We Win, 21st Century Social Movements and the Activists That Are Transforming Our World. The author, Greg Jobin-Leeds. Greg, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much.
It's great to have you. We'll be back.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.